Welcome to NAIFA's Advisor Today podcast series, where we focus on how financial advisors work, live, and give to their local communities and our greater financial services industry. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hi, everyone. I'm your co-host, Chris Gandy, with our wonderful co-host, Suzanne Carawan, and welcome to Advisors Today's podcast, where we feature some of the brightest and best in the industry as it deals with our NAIFA family. So with that being said, we have a wonderful guest today, and I'm super excited to interview him. And those out there, bring out your pens and get ready to take some notes. We have a wonderful guest. But before we go to our wonderful guest and the introduction, Suzanne, can you share with us our sponsor for today's podcast?
Yeah, sure will. Today, we are sponsored by the LUTCF. So a lot of people do not know that NAIFA has brought this back, this entire designation that many people get early in their careers, really jumpstart them to success. NAIFA's brought it completely back in-house. We've overhauled the program, we've revitalized it, and it is relaunched, now open for registration. So if you're out there and you're listening and you don't have that LUTCF, might be something you want to dive into starting now and make it a goal for 2024.
Wonderful. All right, Suzanne, well, I'll let you do the honors of introducing our guest for today's podcast, and then we'll jump right into it.
Well, today we have one of our best. I think everybody always says it about John D. Richardson. And as a matter of fact, I just called him John a couple of minutes ago, and I was like, wow, I never called him that because he is known to us as JDR. So affectionately, we know John as JDR within the walls of NAIFA. And if you don't know him, you need to. So we wanted to spotlight him and all the good work that he is doing for NAIFA and has been doing for quite a long time. So with that, John, how long have you been a NAIFA member?
So I've been a NAIFA member as long as I've been in the business, so 18 years.
Okay, coming up on 20. All right.
So, John, it's great to see you.
Thanks.
It looks like you're standing around. Looks like it's snowing behind you because it's completely white. You know?
Yeah, no. So I do a lot of Zoom meetings, and I basically removed everything I'm in my home office. And so I removed everything from the back walls so that there's no distraction, so they can focus on what we're talking about. And second, oftentimes a lot of people I talk to, they've got not to pick on them, but they've got a bunch of stuff on the walls of how great thou art and like this and that. And so I just nope, keep it clean, simple. Let's focus on you and your needs and not how great of a rock star or whatever I'm doing in my life. So yeah, that's why you got a blank slate. It's a blank wall is what it is.
Okay, got it. Okay. I was going to ask, this is a little Star Trek-y, Star Trek where you got this glow around you, but people that don't know you, you got a wonderful glow, and we'll get into it here in a second. So let's just go to, JDR. When I think of JDR, I think of, FDR, and I think of some of JFK. I start to think kind of presidential. So how did that nickname find you? Because you've kind of embraced that, and it's kind of been like, it's the thing. Like when people probably say your name, they're like, who are you talking about? But I say, oh, JDR, we know him. Like, how did that become a thing, and how did you kind of embrace it and use it?
That's a great question. So let me, okay, yeah, I got it. Because I'm trying to remember, how did this all start? Just like, it's like, why does John wear bow ties? And the answer is, when I was in college at the University of Tennessee, I was dating a lady, and at the time she said, you know what, you'd look cute wearing a bow tie. And then she gave it to me, and I practiced. I was a resident assistant at the front desk. Whenever I wasn't, busting people for underage drinking or for having people in their dorms, in the rooms after hours or whatever, I was busy learning how to tie a bow tie or memorizing Trivial Pursuit cards, because that's what I would do in my spare time when you have downtime. But I would practice, and so I wear bow ties. So back to my name. So my full name is John Daniel Richardson, born in the late 70s. My father, believe it or not, installed the computers at the Jack Daniel's distillery in Lynchburg, Tennessee, back when computers were the size of a refrigerator, and many people don't know that. And so, he was like, you know what, Jack Daniel, that's a great name. My mom's like, no, I don't think so. We're not going to name our kid after a whiskey. Though it's a great whiskey, we're not going to name her Jack Daniel, but they compromised and they call me John Daniel, with the understanding that when I turned 21, I could go back to Jack, but I've been known as JD or John Daniel my whole life by my family. And so it depends on how you know me is how you refer to me. If you was a kid growing up as John, as my college years as Richardson, because that's what people do. They call you by your last name if you're in a fraternity. It's just the thing. And so within the business world or within NAIFA, it's JDR. There was a lady who used to work with NAIFA years ago who had a 3-letter acronym, MGC. And so she's like, I'm going to start calling you JDR. And I was like, okay, so if I got to say that there was a lady who impacted my life, it was MGC who got the JDR started, and I've been running with it ever since. So
I did not know that. Yeah. Did not know that. Yeah.
That's interesting. You talk about the bow tie, which is a unique feature, fairly nostalgic. So tell us a little bit about, John, your journey in the business. Like, how did you get started? You know, there's lots of our listeners out there. We have some experience, and we also have inexperience, obviously, that are in the NAIFA family. But how did you get started and find your way in the business? So if you could rewind the tape back to your first couple years in the business. How did you get in it? What motivated you? And really, how did you kind of break through to kind of know that this was kind of a calling for you during your course of your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm sure I'm much like many people that find their way into this business. This was not on my radar at all. In fact, I went to the University of Tennessee where I got a degree in political science with a minor in Spanish, and never in a million years you would think I'd be a financial guy. But obviously, you know, there was a bigger plan at play the whole time. When I was in college, I had the best summer job a kid could have. I sold books and Bibles door to door, not for one summer or for 2 summers, but for 5 summers. Now, who in their right mind for straight commission goes door to door selling Bibles? That's nuts. In the Southeast. Well, I did it, and I fell in love with talking to strangers, and I learned a lot about myself in the process. And I thought, you know what, career-wise, I want to do something where I'm adding value to other people's lives. I love the idea that every day is a different day, and I get to talk to strangers and make new friends. And when I meet somebody new, I ask myself, why did my path cross with their path? And at that moment, how can I help them? And sometimes it's a short-term fit, and I just introduce them to somebody, we move on, we don't connect again. Other times, some people for a season, you're in alignment with them, and you're doing life, and then you kind of go your separate ways. Other people, they're lifers. I mean, you're going to do life with them the rest of your life. And my job is to discern which is it and be open-handed in all relationships. And so regarding this industry, when I graduated from UT, moved back to Nashville, I worked for John Hancock selling long-term care insurance. Talk about cold calling. I was on the phone calling through a system called the Griffin Network. And this was right after the do not call lists were a thing, and you couldn't call somebody because you get fined. So I'd dial into a system, smiling, dialing, banging out about 250 calls per day, calling through a list to sell people long-term care insurance. It lasted about 9 months. It's like about as much fun as beating my head against that blank wall behind me.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. I'm like, this is stupid. I'm out. I want to teach. I have a heart of a teacher, and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Though the people that brought me into the business, I love them. And I'm still friends with, other ones I've lost connections with. But nonetheless, great John Hancock, great company, great experience. I learned a lot. I'm not the only one who cut their teeth kind of coming in this business doing that. But I went to teach it with Metro Nashville Public Schools for about a year, and as a full-time substitute school teacher, and loved it. A friend of mine was like, John, don't get me wrong, teaching is great, but what if you put your resume out there and just dream bigger? And what if somebody picks you up? So I did. And ended up working for a guy named Dave Ramsey. I'm sure you guys have heard of Dave Ramsey on the radio. So for 2 years, I was part of his team. He actually hired me. In the first year, I was on the phone calling pastors at churches all over the U.S., selling on who Dave Ramsey is and his message of hope and why they'd want to host him live via satellite. The second year, I was on a plane flying to city as a part of his front team. So 2 months before Dave would come to that town to host a live event for 5 hours, myself and another guy, we would fly into that city and kind of stir things up. And then within a matter of about a month or so, they would sell out of all the tickets. And so I got to, I don't know how old I was, like in my mid to late 20s, having a dream job. I'm flying a paint and I'm pinching myself like, this is the coolest thing ever. I get to represent at that time, Dave Ramsey wasn't as much of a name brand as he is today, because this was back in 2003 and 2004. So it's been a minute. But after 2 years of working for Dave, instead of working for the man, I wanted to be the man and become an entrepreneur. And so I left his company, and in 2005, got my life and health insurance license again, Series 766, partnered up with AXA Advisors, also known as the Equitable, and for basically started a career of planning and insurance and investments, all that good stuff, and haven't looked back since. So to answer your question, Chris, never thought I'd be here. Yeah, but wherever I am, I'm going to be all in. It's gonna whatever's in front of me. I feel like it's in alignment with my values and helping people. Let's go. And so, 10-year career with AXA, and then went from there to another company, Guardian, which is another rig broker dealer, and learned how to do planning, comprehensive planning, and then made a shift recently in the last 4 years over to Mass Mutual, where I charge a fee for my time. So now I do fee-based financial planning. So whether it's $24,000 a year on the high end for people who got a lot of pieces moving around, their business owners, and they just got a lot of stuff to plan out, or foundational planning at $3,000 a year. That's my range, is what I charge for my time. And so that I know that when I give them advice, whether they purchase a product or not through me or through our connection, I know I'm compensated for my time, and that removes that sense of I've got to sell something, which I've been struggling with for many, many years leading up to the last 4 years. So it's kind of nice to build a business with assets under management, a fee-based business. And by the way, about 85% of those folks still do product. They still implement solutions with our team because the rapport is thick, the trust is thick, and they've already paid me. And so I'm like, look, you paid me for the advice. I'm acting in a fiduciary capacity. I'm telling you the truth. I'm going to leave you better than the way I found you, and you can take it or you can go implement with somebody else. They're like, you already got my stuff. Let's go ahead and roll with you. So that's I guess that's an abbreviated version of an 18-year career in this business.
Wow, that's a journey. So what do you think was, because what do you think was the catalyst for changing? Change is hard. I just posted something about change today, and part of it is understanding most of the change comes from within first and then out. But you made changes along the way that led to success without you knowing what was going to come at the other place. Like you left AXA going to Guardian, not knowing if you were going to have success there. You left Guardian, said, okay, the best partner for me to work with is the Mass Mutual. But again, there's change, right? And so how do you deal with change in your life and in your career, and advice you would give to others about how they can deal with change?
Sure. So first, and this is not going to be popular, what I'm going to say, but I'll just say right now, my identity is not in the company I work with at that time. So I'm not, not with AXA, not with Guardian or with Mass, and I love them and they're great. But there's some folks, they're like, this is my, I say that because my identity in this industry is with NAIFA. NAIFA has been the common denominator throughout my entire career. NAIFA people, during different seasons of my life when things have been really good and things have been really challenging, personally, professionally, ups and downs, that's my family. They've always had my back. They've always been there for me. So when it comes to, I don't know what the future holds. I may be with Mass Mutual for another 15, 20, 30, 40, who knows? Or I may go independent, or I may do an RIA, or I may you never know. And that's okay. I don't need to know. But as for where I am right now, it's a right fit. And I'm whatever leads my clients in the right direction helps them. And I still feel like is alignment with my values and what's a good fit for me. Cause, everybody's got to find their right fit. That's the beauty of NAIFA. It is a big tent. And there's some folks who embrace the property and casualty insurance space. I don't. I delegate all that to a person who's on my strategic alliance. Some people are all about health insurance. I was in that industry years ago. Then, Affordable Care Act and life changed. And I'm like, now I delegate that out. But when it comes to planning and having meaningful conversations with people about what's important and about gathering assets and building an AUM-based business or a fee-based business, for me, that's where I want to hang my hat. Great example, I have a partner, all things income protection. This is another not very popular thing to say, but I have a dear friend of mine, that's all he does is disability insurance. And so all of my clients, I delegate to him. Now, I could write that business internally and hit all kinds of internal metrics and so forth, but I delegate out to him so that he can shop that coverage with about 15 different companies and take care of my clients. And that's one less thing I got to worry about. Not to mention, I'm kind of staying in my lane. That's his lane. That's my clients love it. I love it. He loves it. I spend quality time with him when we do NAIFA events. You get the idea. So long story short, again, it's one of those things where as you go through life, think of it like MacGyver. I mean, MacGyver had that satchel, right? And he was always prepared because I'm an Eagle Scout, so I got to be prepared for life. But I'm picking up little tools along the way, or ideas, or meaningful conversations, or NAIFA power phrases, or sales concepts, and I'm just putting it in the bag. And then as I meet somebody with a discerning ear, I'm listening to what they're really saying. I'm having a conversation at both the head level and the heart level because I want to truly hear them, and then repeat back to them what they've said so they know I'm actively listening, and then dispense what the appropriate solution would be. And sometimes, to be honest, it's probably 75% of the time, it's not me. John is not the answer. I'm the Sherpa. I'm the sidekick in their story. They're the superhero. I want the spotlight to be on them. I'm walking with them in this season of their life. And then if there's another person in their story, if they had whether it was Marvel and you have X-Men, or you've got superheroes, and there's a superhero missing in your story, and I got to go, I happen to be a part of a team, and I can put that person and plug them into their story and add value to their life by doing so, then so be it. So to answer your question, that's kind of gives you an idea of how I work. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Extreme humility, such humility. But I think you're also probably the biggest cheerleader, right? When things go well for people.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Another thing I do that's probably not normal. There's some people that are very sterile in their approach to this business, and that's cool. I want to blur the lines, obviously keep things professional, keep things compliant. But at the end of the planning process, we've had meaningful conversations at a very deep level where they've been transparent and honest about their numbers, which, to be honest, shame, fear, uncertainty, doubt, all the things that keep people from making decisions are all twisted up in that. I'm like, look, I'm a safe place. We're like in that safety nest. Like there was a movie, I think it's Meet the Parents, where you're in that safety nest. You can be your authentic self, and I'm not going to judge you. And they get that pretty quickly. We go through the planning process. Most of the meetings are via Zoom at the end, or if they're in person. If they're in Zoom and I can chance to head out their way and actually meet up with them in their hometown, great. We break bread. We do whatever equals fun to them. I play tabletop strategy board games. To me, that's fun. So if you want to have a fun activity with me, let's order in and let's play board games. Some people want to go out to eat. We go out to eat. Some people want to, I went to a comedy show, recently, and the client was like, oh, I've been wanting to hear that comedian. I'm like, I love live comedy. Let's go. So I brought my wife, who's my secret weapon, because people like me, they love Kelly. And I bring her along and of course get a couple of seats for my client and their friend or spouse or whoever. And we just go and have a big time. The idea there is this: we take care of business, but I bring in that personal aspect because I want them to see John Richardson with and without the bow tie. I want them to see me in the professional space, and they know that, okay, John knows what he's talking about and he cares about me. But also they see me being in my comfy casual attire, which is usually like a button down, you get the idea. Just being myself and, my nerdy kind of self. And they're just like, okay, I see you, John. I know how you work. And so I feel like that creates a high sense of loyalty because they truly see me for who I am. And if they don't care for that brand, that's okay. There's hundreds of other advisors out there that can help them. But whenever we have challenges, which we do, because it's going to happen, we're going to have friction in life. They give me the benefit of the doubt because they know I care about them as a person first. And it's not about, and there's always, they're willing to be patient with me more so. Same thing with my compliance officer. I overshare with my home office compliance person. Like, this is what I'm up to. This is what I'm doing. She's like, you're so weird. But she knows my story. She knows my cadence. And so if anything ever pops up in the future, she's going to say, that doesn't sound like John. The John I know is super thorough. The John I know explains all of these different things and explains all these details. So you can't say that he didn't cover that because I'm like on the front end. Here are all the reasons why you don't need to take a look at this annuity solution. Now, here are the perks on the back end, and here's the reasons why it would make sense for this portion of your money. But on the front end, here are all the bad things. So it's fully disclosed. And I feel like people appreciate that. Depends on the personality style. Drivers don't, they want just tell me what to do. But most people that are analytical or they want to know the bigger picture, I want to make sure I cover all that. And do in a way that they appreciate it. So
John, thank you for sharing that insight. I think it's very important that people understand that you didn't just arrive at where you are, right? And so to our NAIFA family, you've earned the name JDR, but tell us, how did you get involved with NAIFA? We're going to talk a little bit about your NAIFA journey and all the things that you're a part of, because you're a part of a lot. But tell us, how did you get involved with NAIFA, and what keeps you engaged with NAIFA at the level you're at? Don't go into too much detail about all the stuff you're doing. I'm going to talk about some of those things, and we'll get into that. But
sure,
how'd you get involved?
Yeah. So much like many people, if you've been a minute in the business, they say, well, I went to a meeting, somebody asked me, and I signed up. So I signed up for NAIFA just like everybody else. But again, this is another unique story that many people don't know. I was at my 1 year mark. I was a NAIFA member for a year because somebody said you need to sign up, but I said, okay. I think it was my general agent or manager at that time. But at the 1 year mark, I showed up to the NAIFA meetings, and you ever been in a crowded room and yet you feel completely alone? That was my experience at a NAIFA meeting. I showed up, room full of people, and everybody was sitting it was like that whole flashback to my childhood where I'm in the lunchroom and all the cool kids are sitting at these different tables, and I'm that awkward kid. I think I was wearing a bow tie at that time, which is probably my own fault because I was probably sticking out and being kind of nerdy. But I'm walking it up with my, I wanted to sit with the everybody, but everybody's got their table. It's kind of cliquish. And I'm on the outside looking in thinking, I've got so much to offer. I really want to be accepted. I want to be known. I want to know them. I want them to know me. And I was like, but I felt on the outside. Sat down, ate lunch. But in my brain, I thought, you know what? I'm done. I've been a NAIFA member a year. I gave it a fair shake because that's what you should do. You should at least try something for a season, see if it's the right fit. Well, I gave it a year. I'm out. Until I got this email from our association exec. Her name was Linda. And she said, hey, you should go through this class called Leadership in Life Institute. We commonly refer to as Lily. And I was like, okay, I don't need another activity. But the more I read, I'm like, oh my gosh, this sounds just like a Dale Carnegie training for NAIFA members. And I'm all about leadership development and personal development and communication. And I was like, okay, this sounds great. And they said, oh, and by the way, we're offering a 100% paid scholarship with the understanding that you give 2 years back to NAIFA. I'm like, all right, well, if they'll do that, I'll commit to 2 more years of NAIFA and extend that 1 year into 3. And then at the end of 3 years, then maybe we'll see if I still want to do this or not. But at least I'm going to give 2 years. Went through the training and fell in love with it. I actually understand. I didn't know what NAIFA was until I went through Lily, and then I got it. Went to the national event and went to DC to a advocacy conference because I called her my Lily mom at the time. Brenda, she's like, you need to go to DC. You'd be great. So again, talk about on the outside. I'm sitting in a room with all these guys who are like double my age, who've been in the business forever. And I forgot what year it was, but this is before the National Leadership Council. This is like it was like a AALU NAIFA. It was like the very first one. And but I got to sit at the table with a bunch of legends that people have been doing this and just kind of pick their brains, and it was great. So long story short, it was Lily that basically kept me in NAIFA, got me going. And when they were done, this is so funny. They were done with Lily. They were like, okay, well, you got a 2-year commitment. So I'm in. So I showed up at the board meeting, and Linda and the other people, they're like, yeah, we're gonna put John in charge of the YATs because he's a young guy. We don't really have a YAT thing. So you're gonna do it. And YAT was a brand new concept. And I started like, well, if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna be all in. So I started creating all these events and doing all these things. And a buddy of mine who was older and wiser than me, who's been in the business long, his name is Ron, many, many years before I was in the business. Anyway, Ron looked at me, he's like, John, you're doing so many good things. I tell you what, you have my permission to set as much of what we've been doing for all these years on fire. Just go. And as you ruffle feathers and as you upset people, I got your back. Do you know how much permission that gives a young guy when you got somebody who's been there, done that, who's going to step up? And when you step on somebody's toes, which you will, to say, I got you. And it was great. And so I was just my authentic self and went in. And I remember Linda in a meeting at the end of the table. I mean, I remember she's the one that sent out the email. I remember her saying, who the heck is this John Richardson guy?
Who unleashed this beast?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, it's me. And so, like I said, life is too short to be dull and boring. Wherever you are, be all in, be your authentic self, figure out what your purpose and calling in life is and go do it and just be all about it. And then, you look back and at times you're like, oops, I made a mistake there. Again, if you've got good rapport with people, they'll give you the benefit of the doubt and say, look, I see your heart. I know you probably didn't mean to say that, but I know your heart was good. And I know you're trying really hard. So that's why you just, you're present. So that's how I got my start. And that's why, that's kind of the beginning of my NAIFA story. Went from right into Lilly. And then from there, the leadership chairs, I just kept working my way up NAIFA Nashville and then NAIFA Tennessee. And now I'm serving on national committees within the NAIFA world.
So John, not only are you serving on committees, but you're leading. You didn't just say, hey, I'm going to sit here and just keep the seat warm until somebody else comes. You decided that I'm going to actually be part of leading. So share with us a little bit why leading from the front by the work that you're doing is super important. And then you and I happen to have an experience together. I'm not going to steal your thunder, but share with us a little bit about how Lilly has impacted you and I collectively together because of that.
Sure. So, when I was at the University of Tennessee, involved in the Student Government Association, because there's two different types of people. There's folks who stay at home and they're totally happy watching Netflix, doing their comfy casual, staying at home. They're more introverted in nature. Then you got me. I'm on the opposite end of the continuum. I like to join everything, but when I'm involved, but then I'm like, okay, how can I take my authentic self and plug it in here and positively impact this group that I'm committed to? And sometimes, just like my 1 year of NAIFA, which turned into now, this is a lot of my life. You get involved with something, it's not a right fit, and you say, I'm just going to let that go. So it's okay to prune along the way. It's just like flowers or roses. You prune off of the stuff you don't want, and you focus on you do. So, I guess back to the question, which was, sorry, Chris. I know Lilly was a connection. Oh, the leadership. Why lead? That's what
leading from the front. Yeah.
Yeah. So a buddy of mine, the SGA, back in college, he said something, and people say things in your life and you never forget. And so he shared a story. He's like, if you think about the dogs, the sled dogs up in Alaska in these races, and you think about all these dogs running nose to end, nose to end, nose to end. And he said, you know what? If you're not the lead dog, the view never changes. And that idea stuck in my head. And I thought, you know what? If I'm going to be here, I want to be out front because I want to be able to look. Not to mention, I have a visionary kind of mindset. I like to see of what could be and then take people to where they want. Maybe not necessarily where they think they should be. Then you kind of hear and you're like, you know what? Sounds like we should go here. And here's an idea to get us there. Like, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. Let's go for it. And if it doesn't work out, we can always go back to what wasn't working. But let's at least try and think outside the box and think a little bit bigger. Because there's no harm in that. Because there's plenty of people to help, plenty of impact that we can have. My job in my finite time on this planet is have as much of an impact or a dent in the universe as I possibly can. While I can, because I've got all this energy and enthusiasm to give. And who am I to play it safe and be that fifth or that lead, that dog, and just kind of go with the flow. And that's a lot of people do that. It's like, why? Just be your authentic self, be confident in who you are. Some people are not going to like that. And you're going to have, as the great philosopher Taylor Swift would say, they're going to be haters going to hate, and you just got to shake it off. And that's okay. Other people are going to see that game and they're going to be like, game respects game. They see your heart and they're like, okay, his style is different than my style, but you know what? I respect him because he's being his authentic self. Let's go. And so that's what, that's why, if you're going to do something, be present, be all in. And if you're going to say yes to something, when you say yes, commit to a period of time. So I do, like with NAIFA stuff or with Boy Scout stuff or with other things I'm involved in. I know I want to know the beginning and the end. So I'm going to give it all until that end. And then I'm going to reassess and decide what am I going to do for 2020 whatever. So for example, right now around Thanksgiving is when I start to write my, these different 6 domains of my life that targeted habits and outcomes I want to change. So the habits basically form the goals. They're like, it's not just a wish list or things that I want. It's like, no, I'm going to change these habits, which is going to help me get these things I want personally, professionally, spiritually, all these different domains, right? And then I'm going to actually kick it up a notch because I actually listened to the NAIFA live presentation talking about the 12-week year, Brian Moran's book. And so what if I had 4 years next year in 2024 instead of 4 quarters? And what if you get the idea? So so that's kind of the big picture. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to lead. You have to first lead yourself before you can lead others. Before you can lead yourself, you got to truly know yourself. And I think it was Polonius, he said in Hamlet, to thine own self be true. So if you don't know yourself, figure yourself out. Go take a Myers-Briggs personality. Go take a DISC profile. Go do the Enneagram. Go do any of these things where it tells you this is how you think and how you basically take in information and process it. And then how do people observe you? That's his biggest moment for me was I got a strong personality. And until I didn't realize that for the longest time, and you can push people away. But once you realize, oh, this is how I think and how I communicate, then you can start to attract people because you know that you can temper what you're saying to people who are different personalities. True story. I just went through a Dale Carnegie training. It's 12 weeks, 3 hours each session. I just graduated like a month ago. One of the ladies in the room is my polar opposite. I mean, this woman is the most analytical, detailed person on the planet. At the end of and I'm very expressive and very loud. At the end of the session, I asked her, I'm like, so how'd you take me in? How do you observe me or whatever? And she's like, John, while you're a lot, you never once did I feel overwhelmed by you. In fact, I felt like you were actively listening to me the whole time, which was like I've pulled a 180 from where I was just a handful of years ago, where it's when you're out loud, it could be all about you. I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be about others, but I need to be able to adjust myself a little bit or temper it so that people can receive me well. And so that leads us with Chris to your second part of your question, which is Lily. So if you're going to lead yourself so you can lead others. Lily, again, Leadership and Life Institute, went through back in 2008. And it's hard to believe it's been 15 years since I went through that experience. So I was about 3 years into the business when I went through Lily, which sounds about the right time because, or maybe around that, maybe 2-3 years, something like that. Because you want to be in the business for a minute to know this is your career of choice before you go through Lily. If you're trying to figure out LETCF, get a designation. That's a good foundational designation. And then you graduate up to RICP, LACP, and so forth. But Chris and I, we got to do life together over a period of 10 sessions online through Leadership with Lily online. And, one of those moments for me was when you get to share your heart with others who you kind of sort of know through these NAIFA meetings, but then you get to see the softer side, kind of like those commercials, the softer side of Sears. Well, this was like the softer side of people that are professionals and you truly know them and you start to form relationships, not just for a short term, but for more of a long term as you're doing life together. And so whether it's writing your eulogy and sharing it or, talking about those things, those values that are most important to you. So to me, that was a high quality experience. So
John, were you the moderator?
Yes.
John was the moderator. He was our moderator for our Lily class.
Yeah. Maybe people don't know that you can then volunteer to then moderate and lead the Lily classes. Okay, I got it. Got it. So JDR is Lily dad. Got it. To Chris.
Yeah. So I wouldn't go that far.
Got it.
He is my Lily leader. He has led leadership, which is great.
I would say facilitator, because you're seeing people and you're helping them bring out things inside of them. You're just asking questions, and in the Lily books, they talk about, it's like, you want to go a little bit deeper. It's just like, there's 4 levels of depth when it comes to having a conversation. So most people play it safe. We talk about the weather, sports, superficial stuff. I want to go as deep, as quick as possible to get to those things that matter, but I have to have permission to go there. And a person has to have rapport and trust with me. Just like my previous employer, Dave Ramsey, once said, you got to first be walking with a person with your arm around their shoulder before you flick them in the air. And so before I go deep with somebody, I have to be transparent. I got to be vulnerable. I have to open up my story So they can say, oh, wow, John really got open there. Okay, so I'll be open. And I've found from my experience that when you open up and you start to share your story, people see you, they get to know you. It builds not only credibility, but also connectivity. You're connected with them, and the trust goes way up. And so all the good things that we want in life, because I believe people crave authentic relationships, but they go through life like this. When you're a kid, you're told not to talk to strangers, and then you get into this business. And they're like, they tell the opposite. Go talk to as many strangers as you possibly can. But you can't, because hardwired, mom and dad told me stranger danger. I'm supposed to be like this. Well, there's two things.
That's interesting.
One, you should guard your heart at all times. And I'm responsible for 3 hearts: my heart, my wife's heart, and my puppy dog Piper's heart. I guess she's my baby girl, and I got to protect her from all the craziness in the world. So I'm supposed to guard. Those things are important to me. That being said, there are safe people who I need, and when you discover them through doing programs like Lily or experiences like Lily, where you realize you can be open in your authentic self, and you can let them into your safe place. They get to, and those are safe people. And so how amazing is it through a professional organization that you get to have a personal kind of a connection with people and have conversation about things that matter at a personal level. And that's what Lily does. And so, I've led twice as a facilitator in person, and then a third time online, which was this year. And I had plenty on my plate when Brendan said, hey, you want to do this? I'm like, it's like another hole in your head. Do you really want another hole in your head? But then I'm like, you know what? It's not about me. It's not about me. And the more, when you get opportunity to serve and to pour into others, you learn more about yourself, less you go back on those areas that perhaps you're not proud about, that you need to work on, or you become more aware of those areas, those rough areas of your life, your communication skills or whatever. And also you're giving back to from an organization that gave you so much. And so that's why I serve. I don't have any NAIFA tattoos, though I've been joked. But if you cut me, I do bleed NAIFA blue, I should say, because this is part of my like I said, my identity.
But you did
company. It's a NAIFA.
You really did. You nailed something that's a true fact about NAIFA. It's hard for people. Like when I first came here, I was like, I've never seen people so passionate about their professional association. But it's more than that, because there is that nuanced part of that NAIFA family that people do. They do develop. We actually just did a survey and asked people, what are the top 5 things you get out of NAIFA? And one of them was friends for life, right? And so it's like a really trusted people that they can do life together. I have a question for you, JDR, which is, you just mentioned, you breezed through a couple things there: Eagle Scout, Boy Scouts, et cetera, et cetera. And you mentioned your goal planning, but let's talk about, you do so many things, right? You do stuff across the board. Like you said, your 6 domains. What is your recipe for time management success? I know you're very good at being able to, you're not a short-term, satisfaction person, because you could probably grow up doing that if you're getting an Eagle Scout when you did. But what do you do on the time management to shove all this in here?
It's a great question. I'd be lying to say I'm doing it with excellence, because I could grow in that area. But what I've learned along the way is that there's a few things I've done that worked. One, I do time blocking. And so I've got time, whenever I'm doing NAIFA stuff, like right now, I got this time block, I'm all in. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to have for lunch. I'm not going to think about later on tonight, I've got a meeting after hours. I'm not thinking about any of that stuff. I'm thinking about you guys and being present with you. And so wherever you are, be all in and be present in that time block, and go and just all in. And then when that time block is done, I need a little minute, and you walk, stretch a little bit, transition, shift gears, and then go into that next block, and then the next block, and the next block. So my calendar, if you look at it, it's color coded. And so if it's a green block, it's business. I'm on Zoom meetings. I've got a few of those this afternoon where I'm talking to folks, catching up. We're at the planning process and working. So that's green. If it's purple, it's purple is NAIFA. If it's blue, it's like a planning or getting ready for client meetings or personal development. Orange is politics. Khaki is Boy Scouts. Red, because Kelly and my dog Piper are near and dear to my heart. They're red. And so anything that's personal, I'm spending quality time with those people I love, is red. So you get the idea. So if I look at my calendar, I look at it the night before, I kind of map out, because I don't want to surprise myself, because I've done that before, and there's nothing worse than this feeling in the world. Then you got a meeting at 7:00. The client calls and you're like, oh shoot, I forgot to look at my calendar the night before. I usually start my day at 8 and I'm caught flat-footed, and it's super embarrassing, not to mention it hurts your credibility. So the night before I check, I kind of look at, it's mapped out, it's color-coded, but then I'm like, okay, I got this. And then I can kind of see, well, today's a heavy day. I got a million things going on. So when people call in, they're going to go right to voicemail, and that's okay. I'm not going to call them back probably till 8 o'clock tonight. It's all good. And, but again, if they know you and they have rapport with you and you call them back, say, look, here's the deal. Whenever I'm with somebody, I'm present with them. I'm all in. That's why I'm returning your phone call within 24 hours, but it's later on in the evening, or you get the idea. So
yeah,
it's color-coded calendar and Outlook. My wife and I, we have a joint calendar. We call it our Jolly calendar. I'm John and Kelly, her name is Kelly. And so together it's either going to be Jelly or Jolly, because both of us are upbeat, happy people. We call it our Jolly calendar. So I've got a work calendar that she doesn't have access to for compliance purposes. And I have all my business stuff on it. And then we got the Jolly calendar, which she reminds me all the time, honey, you didn't put that on the Jolly calendar, because it's on my work calendar. It's color coded, but it's not on my, so whenever we date night or fun activities or whatever. So that goes on our Jolly calendar. So by keeping those shared calendars with people who are important to me in my life, there's transparency. It keeps me accountable and keeps me on track.
Very good. John, you mentioned politics, right? It allows for us to kind of talk about the political aspirations and some of the things that you would like to do with politics. Why get involved in politics? I mean, I understand you may admire politicians and pontificate like them, but you've gotten really connected in the political world, without going into how heavy you've been involved. But why get involved in politics and the importance of doing that, and especially you're running a small business essentially,
right? Yeah, it's like I'm running a business on top of running a business. You're right, because being involved in politics. And so, that back to the expression, if you're going to be a part of something, take a leadership role. But I believe there's two types of people in politics. There's folks who are behind the scenes, who are part of the machine. And then there's those people who are out front, who are leaders. And I believe that you got to kind of choose your path or choose your own adventure. And if you want to be this person out front and leading and being an elected official, you should be doing the things preparing you for that season of life. And when I said season, it's not a lifetime deal. It's, hey, I'm going to give 2 years or 4 years or 8 years. I'm going to do my time, make as much of a positive impact as I possibly can, and then get out. Go back to work, go back to doing your thing. Don't be a career politician. Again, that's my bias. Funny you should ask me that question. A buddy of mine gave me this book just yesterday, and I'm working on it. It's called Leadocracy, and it's all about adding more leaders into government and politics. There are so many people, when they think of politics, they think of bureaucracy, and it's hard, and it doesn't work. And there's too few people from the private sectors. This book was all about successful people killing the private sector. They know how to lead people. They can lead themselves well. They can lead others. They need to be involved in government and politics, and that way we can actually positively impact our communities at the local, state, and federal level. But there's so many folks that are like, well, that guy wouldn't be a right fit because he's super smart in business, but he's not as polished of a speaker, or perhaps he doesn't have the coolest hair, or all these superficial things that people vote for these different reasons. But you get the higher quality leaders to step out of their comfort zone, again, for 2 years or 4 years, to go serve in the public space, make a positive impact, then go back to the private space. They become better. As I'm reading this book, I'm learning more about it. They become better people because they understand that it's a cooperation between the private and the public sector. We all got to get along. We're all on the same planet together. And it's not a blue versus red, or, again, we're all on the same team. Let's figure out a way to work together, because I believe personally that politics these days, it's divisive. It's polarizing. It's a hot mess. That's why I decided to run last year. I'm like, I'm over it. What if Mr. Rogers ran for political office, and my campaign was like, we need to learn how to love each other again, be kind to each other again. And that was my message when I went door to door, and I won. I beat out my opponent, who was definitely more polarizing than I was. And that was awesome when people are like, you're weird, but in the right way. I'm glad you're doing something. Let's go. And so my 4-year term of office, I got 1 year down. I got 3 more to go. to make as much of a positive impact in my city of Nashville. And then when I'm done, I'm done. And I'll in 3 years from now, I'll figure out what the next step is. And maybe it's been real. It's back to the private sector, or there may be something else. That, again, part of the secret of life, I believe, is keeping your hands wide open so things can come in and flow through, and you're a conduit for others. And versus a close-fisted, I got to get mine, it's all about me. To me, this is a scarcity mindset. It's also, some cultures, it's a fist, and it looks like we're about to fight. Versus a palm open, even a dog, they see a fist, they know that you're not so friendly. Palm open, they're like, oh, he's a friend. So why don't we do that with our time and our talents and our gifts and pay it forward, whether it's through NAIFA or politics or scouting or whatever organization you're in. Again, give back, because time is finite. Let's go make the most of what we have of it, and let's have that ripple effect so that 100, 200, 300 years from now, or even thousands of years from now, people, they won't remember your name, but you actually threw a stone into a pond that rippled out, and it continued to grow. And it's kind of fun to know that you had a positive impact in this world. So to me, that's a underlying motivation, is know that, my life mattered, and I actually did leave a positive impact in this world.
Wonderful. All right, Suzanne, I think JDR, he killed it. He's doing such a great job. He's a natural.
I know.
He did
we
not
need to clone
have questions before everyone, so he's just able. That's who he is. He's a leader, and many of us could take a lot of notes. If you didn't take a lot of notes, I did. You can always get better. John, I like the idea you said. Choose your path or your adventure. That's kind of interesting, because we are constantly making conscious choices and subconscious choices. We're either moving closer to our goal or further away. So with that being said, we do have a lightning round, John. We do not have
we don't have any game boards, but
sound effects, but we do have a lightning round. But before we go to the lightning round, Suzanne, do you have any other questions for Mr. JDR before we get to the lightning round?
I will just testify. I've actually, because this is a very NAIFA thing and it's a very JDR thing, I've been to John's house and he hosted a NAIFA dinner there. And when he says he's got games, he's got games. This man's got games. He's got like a game closet, like tons and tons and tons of games. So yeah. And then I'll give you one last thing, that one of my favorite quotes in life is from Eleanor Roosevelt, who says, most people tiptoe softly through life to arrive safely at death. Right. And so you are totally living that, because you're not, why not? You're right. Why not give to gain? So I think that's a great thing. So thanks for your leadership. Yeah. With that, Chris, we will do our time for the lightning round.
All right, JDR. So many people may know you, but they don't know you. Okay. So this is an opportunity for our NAIFA members and those people who are considering joining NAIFA, getting to know the man behind the bow tie. Right. Okay. And so I'm just going to ask you questions. We're not going to ask you, when you were 7 years old, why did you pull the little kid's hair? We're not going to ask you questions like that. We're going to ask you questions that you know the answer to. So just whatever comes off the top, that's what we're going to go with. Okay. So we'll start off with something easy. Okay. Highest level of Boy Scouts that you got to?
Eagle Scout.
Eagle Scout. Great. How many knots can you tie?
Easily probably 3 dozen, probably about 36 or so.
That's pretty impressive. Okay, see, you remember those things, right?
Sure.
Simple stuff. Okay, so it gets a little bit harder from here, JDR. Are you ready?
Ready.
Here we go. So, favorite quote?
That's a good one. So it's a passage out of the Bible. It says, "Behold, how good and pleasant it is for brothers to dwell together in unity." And that's Psalm 133:1.
Awesome. All right. John, your proudest moment is in your career?
That's a great question. Well, I'll tell you what. In San Antonio, Texas, I think it was in 2018, I received the Yacht Leader of the Year award. And so I got this really heavy trophy, which was, it was big and it's glass or whatever. And I got this red jacket. that afforded me an opportunity to start doing life with a whole bunch of other people that were previous leader recipients, as well as people in the front. And so I get to help pick. So I got to join like a little fraternity within the NAIFA world, and I'm very close to these people, and we do a lot of life together. So much so that we have a monthly book club where we read books and we talk about them. So I would say because experience, it's opened more opportunities for me to serve NAIFA at a much more meaningful level and form deeper, more meaningful relationships.
Favorite food?
Well, I'm a big fan of White Castles. and my wife, whenever people come to town, she says, she's like,
when I think that.
I was like, oh, I know this amazing restaurant. It's called White Castle. And people are like, have you lost your mind? I'm like, oh, the best. So yeah, I'm a big fan of White Castles, the steam of the cheese and you get a big red. I know it's like probably on the scale of healthiness, like at the bottom, but the only thing they don't offer at White Castle is banana pudding. That would be my dessert of choice.
Wow. All right, John, if you could go back and tell yourself something in your first year, what advice would you give yourself if you're in the first year of the business?
Good question. Be more intentional with the gifts and abilities that you have. So yeah, be more intentional in all areas, whether it's through mentorship, through the choices that you're going to make regarding the kind of clients you want to work with. And if I know I go back and I would specialize quicker versus trying to be a broad, be a generalist. As they say, there's riches in the niches. You just got to figure out your lane, figure out what you're great at, delegate the rest. Be strong in those areas and own it like big time. And I'm still working through that process. It's one of those things where, I love to say I have it all figured out, but I don't. And so I'm constantly, I have a mentor, I've got multiple mentors that coach me up on a regular basis every other week to help me get more and more dialed into why I'm doing what I'm doing, to take it to that next level so I can impact more people's lives, because I feel called to lead leaders. That's like a purpose or calling my life. So be more intentional so you can be a stronger leader of leaders.
All right, John, last question. You go back in history, you can have dinner with anyone, whether they're alive today or they passed away. Who would you have dinner with and why?
Well, all the presidents come to mind, of course, and there's, of course, a lot of people out of the Bible that come to mind. But I would say my grandmother, my mom's mom. I miss her so much, and to have an opportunity to go back and just spend another day with her, that'd be awesome.
Well, John, we appreciate you and all the work you do. We appreciate the fact that you've only begun to scratch the surface of what we know you're capable of. And thank you so much for being here on Advisors Today's podcast. John, we're going to give you the floor. Is there anything you would like to say to NAIFA Abroad, to our listening members?
Yeah. So if you're a NAIFA member, figure out where your right fit is. You're on the bus, get in the right seat and go and get more involved. If you're kicking the tires and wondering, should I get on the bus? What are you waiting for? Become a NAIFA member today. And realize that sometimes when you're on the bus, this is, of course, you talk about putting the right person in the right seat on the bus. Sometimes you're in one seat for a season and you're like, you know what? I don't need to be in this seat anymore. And sometimes it's your turn to drive. Sometimes it's your turn to navigate. Sometimes it's your turn to be the rowdy kid in the back of the bus who's messing with the other kids, and that's okay. But you're on the bus, and know that NAIFA throughout your entire career will always be there to help you keep moving in the right direction. But realize, again, this is one of my values, is that we're all on the same level. And though we may have days where you have some awesome days and some character building days, you treat folks fairly and you treat folks with kindness, and realize that you're serving in that season for a time, but guess what? That time will pass and then you'll be in a different seat, and that's okay. Because your identity is not wrapped up in a title or in a moment. We're all the same. We're all serving and trying to make an impact. So get on the bus, get involved. And when the time for you to switch seats is time, don't be grumpy and just sit there and be like, well, I'm not going to move because this is my seat. It's got my name on it. Nope. Get up, move to a different seat, give somebody else a chance who's coming up to sit close, to drive the bus, to navigate. And that's okay. It's totally okay because it's a big old bus and we got plenty of seats for everybody.
Thank you, John. As long as you're driving the bus, you're leading from the front.
That's right. You get a better view from the front too, right?
Better view from the front. The view continuously changes. Suzanne.
Yeah, that's going to stick.
Before I close it.
You know what? We are looking forward to seeing everybody next week, if you can believe it, at National Leadership Conference. I'm looking forward to seeing you, John, and you, Chris. And so we, yes, to reiterate John's point, if you're not a volunteer, think about it. Get involved.
We will see everyone at NLC. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to the Advisors Today podcast, where we uplift and promote the opportunity to meet some of the superstars in the industry to make the industry better for all of us collectively together. As John would say, it's best that we get a chance to live life together and share some life's great moments. And as Suzanne said today, it doesn't pay well to tiptoe through life. You're going to be in it, be involved, get involved, volunteer. We'll see you next week, same time. Thanks for tuning in to Advisor Today's podcast. See you soon.
Thanks for joining us for NAIFA's Advisor Today podcast series. Make sure to subscribe to get future episodes. And if you're interested in coming on the show, let us know.